accepted, challenge accepted. Reality is always challenge accepted. Challenge accepted, challenge accepted. Reality is always challenge accepted.
Now, we know how it goes after lunch. Half of you are already in hibernation mode.
Please don't fall asleep now. We cannot market you either in real life.
But if anyone starts snoring, we will just call it load testing for the mics.
So let's shake off the food coma, review our brains, and get ready for the afternoon session.
Starting with someone who's definitely won't let you snooze. She's quirky, creative, and award-winning.
At EuroSTAR, she won Best Paper. At TestCon Europe, her talk was rated the best of the entire conference.
She's a consultant, writer, and the voice behind the Quality Bits podcast and blog.
She's lived and worked across multiple countries, always curious to learn from new teams and cultures.
She once made a short documentary film. She loves writing, and she brings artsy creativity into tech.
Today, she's here to challenge us to escape the trap of chasing perfect software and instead focus on what actually matters.
Please give a big, curious, and very awake welcome to Lina Zubyte!
Mic on? Oh, yeah. Hello, everyone. That was quite a welcome. When I read it first, I was like, ooh, you know, artsy, quirky. I do use these words, but together they sounded very interesting. And I think the last sentence, or like part of my bio, says something like, she will make you laugh while you think deeply. I was like, what? But let's see if I make you laugh while you think deeply. So today I would like to talk about perfectionism a little bit, and I think a lot of us face this a little bit. So how can we escape the perfect and ask ourselves, does it actually matter? That's a question I really hope all of you end up asking more. So first of all, why is it important? Well, because breaking out of perfection, you can actually become a better QA understanding what value is. Frequently in this role, we're even thinking, yeah, you know, I test things and I have to find things. I have to be almost perfect and make sure that the software is perfect. Yet, are we actually talking about value when we do that? So, first of all, before I begin, I'll tell a little bit about myself. So, I am originally Lithuanian. I have lived in Hungary for 2 years, and then I moved to Germany, where I lived for over 5 years, and then I decided it's time to move back. So I moved back. I have worked in startups, multinational companies, and consultancies, and right now I'm working as a freelancer. So in this diverse experience, I worked with different countries, different people. I worked in different contexts and projects, and I learned lots of tricks on the way. I started as a manual tester who would just say, check. We actually verified that. I learned automation, but the biggest important learning for me was data. I fell in love with data, and that shifted my whole approach of QA. And right now, I do believe in whole team quality approach and accountability, that we should actually all care about it. And a lot of it is about the system and the process, right? So a lot of problems we have with quality are system related. But it was not always this way. So when I started, I have this confession to make, that I am a recovering perfectionist. To the level that, you know, if I have a scratch on my glasses, and right now I do, it really bothers me. I'm like, oh, this is terrible. And in a sense, we get paid to sort of be perfectionists, because we spot issues everywhere we go. Sometimes my friends even tell me, Lina, stop this QAing of real life. You know, you leave work at work. But, you know, that's also something we tend to do. So I used to be that QA, especially at the start of my career, where I would say, imperfections shall not pass. Everything should be great, right? It should be pixel perfect. It should be really functioning. And if it's not, well, it's not that great, and I am this person who is telling how it should be. So I remembered that I was actually proudly stopping releases, sending this email saying, yeah, no, we found a bug, and we're not going to release this. And I remember also not feeling good about my work as a QA if I don't find bugs. I would actually end up piling up certain bugs and trying to find at least something, because otherwise, am I useful and good at my job if I don't? And I remember that I really felt like I am representing the customer, so I know better which bugs should be fixed, right? Isn't that our job as QAs to represent the customer? And is this the mindset we should have? Find and fix all the bugs, test all the things? The more I worked in the QA, the more I was like, wait a minute. Is that actually what matters? Is it so important that we find every single bug and that it's pixel perfect and every specification works? Is it that important? And the idea of what an issue is can be very subjective and even played for the sake of the system we're in. This comic really illustrates this for me. Our goal is to write bug-free software. I'll pay a $10 bonus for every bug you find and fix. Yahoo, we're rich. Yes, yes, yes. I hope this drives the right behavior. I'm going to write me a new minivan this afternoon. This comic is the situation in many companies. If we're measuring defect amount, easy, we can rig it. And a lot of bugs, are they about quantity? Do they actually matter when we work on them? That's a big question to ask, and it's a little bit harder than just seeing a number, right? I reported 10 bugs, I'm so productive. And it takes effort to break out of this and realize that there's a lot of complexity in this. So one thing that helped me a lot was data, and it humbled me a lot. Because being an all-knowing force is also not easy and bound to fail, so it was just a matter of time until I failed, right? All this imperfection shall not pass, and I'm perfect. It wasn't sustainable, right? So one of the earliest memories I have where I realized that maybe I'm not necessarily like my customer was when we had to talk and think about Internet Explorer 11. I don't know, some of you may be lucky enough to have never tested it, but the ones that are laughing, likely you were lucky enough. Internet Explorer always had issues with the UI. So something would just get distorted out of the blue. And our team at that moment was like, let's stop supporting it. We were working on this automotive project where we were building this like a very modern white label platform where you can basically heat up your car from where you are. So we were like, these are tech-savvy users, right? And they announced that it will be deprecated next summer. So we're like, who uses it, right? Definitely not our users. And I was on board with the team, right? It's fine, let's not support it. And then we were like, just let's ask some data, right? And we got the data back, and it was in top 3 most popular browsers. That was the first moment when I was like, my idea of the customer is not necessarily correct, because frequently we are not our customers. And that's a little bit humbling, right? In a role where you're supposed to represent the customer, you're not really your customer. You could be a very different person than they are. But it's okay, as long as we put in the effort to learn from them. And that's the humbling part, because it's not that we know everything. It's understanding that you have to put in some effort to learn more about your customers. And the more I am in the field, the more I make peace with myself that imperfections are part of life. It's still very difficult. I challenge the status quo of our perceived quality. Like, who said that this is quality? And is it actually? And maybe we're a little bit stuck up in our certain rules and assumptions. And I question if that bug actually matters. Even if I reported it, I may be wondering, is this actually, very important? Not always I question it. Sometimes I still feel like I know it, but that's not always the case. And there is a product that challenged my perception of quality the most. So currently I work as an independent consultant, and I work with a project that's developed by Oslo University. It's called DHS2. DHS2 is an open source product that is actually District Health Information System 2 that is used in so many countries, and a lot of us maybe don't know about it. But it's generic design open source product. It's especially used as a national health system. So likely in your countries, you have it as well. You have a certain system that's used there. However, a lot of countries have enough funds to have it. And if you don't have funds, especially less developed countries may use something like DHS2. The first time I saw it, I was like, oh, it's a bit ugly, no? And then when I would click around and I would be like, you know, what's going on? I would realize that there are so many bugs and so many usability problems in this product. That sometimes you click somewhere and it's like not intuitive, it's a little bit clunky. And I would find so many bugs there, and I joined them as the QA lead. So I was like, what matters in a project like that? That you can really customize. You can enter data, you can visualize data, you can make it work the way you want, and it's used all around the world, right? So your users may be in South America, they could be in Africa. And you have to understand with whom you're working. So I sat down with the lead design, Joe, and I was like, Joe, don't you think that design is a little bit, you know, not great? And I was a little bit sassy there because I was like, you know, I have worked in companies. And Joe was really like just calm and reserved, and he was like, you know what, look around. And we were sitting in Oslo University, and there was this picture. Joe said this picture was taken in a field trip. This picture was taken when we were going to meet our users. And this lady is sitting on the street, likely a very busy, noisy street, trying to fill in health records. What matters to this woman? Does she care that our DHS2 is such a shiny, beautiful UI? No, she just wants it to work. She just wants it to be easy to enter data. She wants it to be functional. And maybe her internet connection is so bad that she cannot even load that fancy UI. So Joe said, you know what, maybe, you know, I cannot put this product in my portfolio of design, how amazing this is, and that it uses latest libraries. But maybe that's not the point of it. Maybe the point is to make it work, so that you wouldn't need to fill in healthcare records like that, so that you could digitalize it, and that's what DHS2 is for. So working with this product, I was like, it really questions my understanding of quality and what actually matters. Because what I learn is usually in companies that are like, oh, it's very fast internet, and we have to make it really nice and shiny. But we don't talk that much about value actually behind it, or like, does it matter to be that shiny? Maybe in some contexts it does. So what I realized was that quality is about balancing trade-offs and admitting where it's okay not to be perfect. In this case, it was obvious that, you know, maybe we shouldn't even make the heavy UI because as beautiful as it would look, it could be challenging in certain countries. Another thing that makes me think of trade-offs is security triangle. These imperfect circles are displaying where you may be in this triangle. Security triangle says that there's functionality, security, and usability. You cannot have it all. So once you're thinking, oh yeah, we should be definitely very secure, but then your usability will not be that great. Like, just think about your parents and relatives trying to use second-factor authenticator, or like internet banking. They don't want that, and they're like, oh, where do I have to find it? And working in healthcare, so when I joined DHS2, I was like, okay, it's mostly used for healthcare, so it must be secure, right? It's very important that we have security. But then we would see articles like this. Workarounds to computer access in healthcare organizations. You want my password or a dead patient? The more feedback we would get from users, the more they would say, oh, this is annoying. I don't want to enter a very difficult password. I don't want to enter second-factor authenticator and so on. So these comments make you think because you're like, you know, it's healthcare data, we should make it secure. But the reality in those organizations is that there are, for example, stickers where you just write your username and password. And there was a desktop shortcut found on an abandoned PC with all the logins and passwords. It was in this paper, right? So I was like, okay, maybe, you know, that's not necessarily reality. I don't know. Then I went on a field trip, and I saw this in this healthcare facility. Under the screen, there is PW, and there is a password. So anyone walking into this room could actually connect and see the data of patients. Some of this data is quite sensitive. However, in healthcare, sometimes you may want to access data very quickly, right? Because it could be a matter of life or death. So thinking of all these challenges, I was like, oh my goodness, there's so much to balance here, right? And trade off, and I cannot have it all. But we have to somehow learn and understand what we should work on. So QA is a lot about risk management and realizing what is valuable. And it may prove your assumptions wrong on a daily basis. I may think something is important, but is it? Who said it? I thought that, right? But we should actually reevaluate some of our assumptions as, definitely a holy grail. So what we did was actually we tried to explore on what matters by learning from actual users. So we went on 2 trips, which were really awesome. One was Ghana and another Ethiopia, and I learned lots of useful things for my work, but I also learned some fun things, like Ghana's very creative coffins. So if you die and you're a very honorary person of the community, and you really like Coca-Cola, your coffin could look like a Coca-Cola bottle. But then if you're a fisherman and you really love fish, then maybe it could be a fish. So here is a question to you. If you died, what would your coffin be? And exactly, likely it's a bug for many of us. And when we were stuck in a traffic jam in Accra, I remember also asking our colleagues, an implementation lead who works usually with users implementing the HS2 said about the tech lead, oh, he's definitely a big bug. And I was like, what? But then I realized why he said it, because he meant it a little bit sarcastically, that he doesn't fix those bugs. But it made sense, because he was actually trying to think of trade-offs. He wouldn't close a bug very easily, because he wouldn't just say, oh, it doesn't matter. He would always ask, why? Like, why is this user reporting it? Maybe it is very important. Then another thing is the calendar in Ethiopia is different. So my question to you is, what's the year in Ethiopia currently? So we have 2025 here. What is the year in Ethiopia? Does anyone know? What? 4,000? No, it's not 4,000. No, not 7,000. Actually, it's 2018. I really love this headline, which says, party like it's 2018. Because Ethiopian calendar is 7 years behind. They just had their new year in September. So we have to support the whole other calendar. In Ethiopia, there are 13 months. 12 months have 30 days. And the last one, 13th month, has 5 days. Actually, what we heard from Ethiopians is that if you work on those days and it falls to be work days, you don't really get paid because it's just 5 days. Who cares, right? You can work there. So this whole system expands your view because you're like, did you make your system, something that others could use, especially in, different calendar systems? Because we work in one type of calendar. We cannot realize that there's so many other ways people use the system. Another thing is we visited health facilities, and sometimes you would walk in and you would see these sun-kissed posters and you would be like, I don't know, this is very clean. And then you're like, who am I to question this, right? I'm just a visitor, and there are certain realities in countries that you cannot comprehend. So what we realize is that it's okay and part of the job to be proven wrong on what actually matters. And when we went there, we realized that offline mode is hard to imagine, but it is a reality in many countries. In one of the facilities, someone was so excited, they were like, you know what, now we have this internet stick. We no longer need to go 3 hours with our hard drive to upload data in the nearby district. And I went on a trip recently, and there was this lady, and she said, oh yeah, how come in the mountains there's no signal? And I was like, well, there's lots of countries where there's no signal. And then she was like, yeah, but in Canada it does work. Yeah, in Canada, but not in other countries. So a lot of countries still do even SMS data recording, because you go in the villages and you don't really have it. There's no infrastructure as well. So this internet, which even is super, super slow and bad, it could save so much time in those countries. Another thing that I realized was that some bugs that seem to be in outdated UI that nobody uses actually should be fixed, because for some people it was daily scenario. When we asked some officer, show us how you use the product, and then we saw them open an old app, we were like, what? We thought that's deprecated. You shouldn't be using that. But then these statements also don't work. If I say upgrade it or just use it like that, who am I to say it? Because a lot of them are getting their systems managed by an administrator, or like even politically it's a decision if it should be upgraded or not, because that means training, that means funds. A lot of those cases also, when we would just try to figure out, sitting here, you know, with good internet, we would not realize what's happening. Where, for example, in Ghana, they had lots of duplicate records. And they also had some records where a person would be in the system and then they would just disappear. And we're like, what's going on there? And then they said, well, what's going on is that actually there's a huge HIV stigma. So if you have HIV, you can have medication. But to get that medication, you sometimes go to a different district because you're embarrassed. So that's how duplications come to the system. Another thing was actually people disappearing. And we were like, well, what's going on? Why would people just disappear? And we took this healthcare officer in, and then we were going to some facility. And they were like, well, it's easy. I was like, what do you mean it's easy? Like, why do you take medicine that helps you to have a normal life? And then one day you're like, okay, I'm not taking it anymore. And then he said, well, it's the church. I was like, what? And then they said, apparently in Ghana, if you go to the church, very frequently you are being told that we will heal you. You don't need medicine anymore. So these problems are very different than, you know, just me thinking, oh, there's a duplicate in data. And, or like infrastructure of the country, right, when it comes to internet access. And I may say, oh, but who has offline mode? Because I'm annoyed, even if I click on something and it doesn't load immediately. I'm like, this is slow. So this field data was actually something that added extra weight for us in the backlog. So when we found information, we would add this context. Because otherwise, it's a lot of assumptions, right? So I'm assuming what is important. But actually going to the field, you realize that the realities in other countries can be very different than your own. Frequently, when we find a bug, we say, oh, it's an edge case. But like, who said that something is an edge case? And when we were in Ethiopia, we realized that some of the edge cases are your daily business. So here is not a sped up GIF. So actually, this is the real time. So it's a person switching tabs. And they open the same software in 2 tabs, and they switch super quickly because they see which one loaded, because their computer is super slow and internet is really slow. And then at that moment, when we were looking at them, we were like, almost like, calm down, it's okay, wait for it. Because like, do we do that, right? If we have good internet connection, we don't really open multiple tabs of the same thing, trying to wait it to load. And then what the user did was, when it finally loaded, they clicked upload button 7 times, like furiously. And when it did not react the first time, they just kept clicking. And it was slow connection, it was old computer, and at that moment, we had this like horror moment in our team, because we're looking at them, and we're like, we're not going to stop them, right? We're observing how they use the product, and we held our breaths, because we were ready for some race conditions. We knew something ugly is about to happen, and we admitted our defeat. We haven't tested that, because who does that? And there was a user just doing that in front of our eyes. And actually, we found quite big bugs with this case. And apparently, it was an important issue. So testing is a continuous learning process. And we have to embrace our creativity. If we cannot really go to the users, well, maybe we can try at least to think different ways, to a little bit exercise the muscle of creativity, or like different people. Because I think we have to be sort of humble in this role. Because we may not be our users, and that's totally okay. So what could you do even if you cannot go to your customers? Well, there is a book, 50 Quick Ideas to Improve Your Tests, and there is a mnemonic of shaded figs, which could be a nice way for you to think about testing. So you could test a scary path, which is the highest risk path, happy, the usual path, angry, where application may react badly to, delinquent, security risks path, embarrassing, if it broke, well, that would be really embarrassing. Desolate, give bleakness, zeros, nulls, and so on. Forgetful, fill up the storage. Indecisive, simulate an indecisive user. Greedy, select everything. Or stressful, explore the breaking points of the functions and components. This is just one type of mnemonic. There are more mnemonics that you could use to try to be like, okay, maybe now we do a creative session and try to understand, okay, today we will test as a very indecisive user. So time to time, think about your users and how you could test it, and just put on a different hat, a different persona for this testing. So to wrap up this, there are some more tips and reminders for you that I have. First of all, working with quality is very important and broad. So we have to keep on learning. It's not just writing certain automated tests in one language or framework. Sometimes when I would interview people and they're like, oh yeah, for 15 years I've wrote Selenium test cases. And it's like, isn't it boring for you? And also like, but that's not the field. You should really keep up to date. And when it comes to this, there are some questions you can ask as well to learn more about the product you're with, which is, who are the users and stakeholders of your product? Can you get to know them? Do you know your users, or do you assume who they are? And even if you cannot get to know them directly, maybe there is data, so you could get data from analytics or monitoring. I think that, for me, was a life changer in the career, because I was like, okay, this is something that I can actually learn from and even understand which bug is how important, because maybe 50% of users are facing it, and maybe it's just 0.5. Then keep only what's essential. So I'm really big on decluttering overall and thinking about messes that we live in. How does your backlog look like? If it's more than 100 bugs, can we be honest here? Are you going to fix all of them? Or you're just hoarding them? Maybe it's time to be a little bit real here. And balance trade-offs. Can you answer a question, how much testing is enough, without telling me never enough? Sometimes I ask it in the interviews, and then a person says, oh yeah, we could always test and continue testing. And I'm like, okay, we are not going to work together. So I don't mock them like that. But working in testing, you have to understand the risk. You have to understand what you're working with. You have to understand what's the critical core functionality and what is going to be traded off, because you cannot have it all. And lastly, does that bug that you reported actually matter? Or it's much more important that you actually release the product with that bug in it and get feedback from your users? So to wrap up, always question yourself and others if it actually matters. Because the hard truth is that some of your release stoppers should never be fixed, as much as it hurts, while some of the edge cases are real people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So you can find Lina in speakers corner. Do you want to answer? You have time for one question?
Yes.
Just one question. The next will be in the speakers corner. So the first one wins. Who wants the t-shirt now? So you will meet Lina in speakers. There is a question. Of course, the most far away.
I also have some resources.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Alex. So back to the recent question that was asked towards the audience, how much testing is enough testing? I would like to ask if it's safe to assume that enough testing is when the product no longer has critical or like the highest severity issues, and it's already like ready to go. For example.
I think it's sort of philosophical, and I'm quite philosophical and quirky, apparently. So you would need to dig deeper what it means severe, what it means important for you and your context. So yes, it's understanding the value behind it, right? Do we have any areas that are very important for this product that we haven't tested and got feedback on? If we still haven't gotten feedback and we are not, okay, this is good to go, then you need to test those areas. And if you have bugs, then of course it's a conversation. It's a conversation, what is valuable for you in your context, also maybe involving most of the organization.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much. And once again, You can meet Lina in Speaker's Corner. Now let's send her off the stage with big round of applause. Lina Zubyte!